In an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn and National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster explained that President Trump has a clear-eyed outlook that the world is not a global community, but an arena where nations, non-governmental actors, and businesses engage and compete for advantage. They added, rather than deny this elemental nature of international affairs, we embrace it. That embrace has now led the U.S. to withdraw from the Paris Accord on climate change, signed by 193 other countries. Now, the elemental aspect of international relations has, of course, existed for millennia, and American foreign policy amply reflects this feature. The United States has the world's largest military and intelligence apparatus, troops and bases in dozens of countries around the world, and ongoing military interventions on several continents. This is not the picture of a nation unaware of political and military competition. But in 1945, the world did change. In the wake of two of the deadliest wars in human history, with more than 60 million killed and much of Europe and Asia physically devastated, the United States tried to build a new international system. It created institutions, rules, and norms that would encourage countries to solve their differences peacefully through negotiations rather than war. It created a system where trade and commerce would expand the world economy so that a rising tide could lift all boats. Now, it didn't work perfectly. The Soviet Union and its allies rejected many of those ideas from the start. Many developing countries adopted only some parts of the system. But Western Europe, Canada, and the United States did, in fact, become an amazing zone of peace and economic, political, and military cooperation. The West that emerged is, in historical terms, a miracle. Europe, which had torn itself apart for hundreds of years because of the elemental nature of international competition, was now competing not to annex countries and subjugate their populations, but just to create better jobs and more growth. This zone of peace grew over the years, first encompassing countries like Japan and South Korea, then later a few countries in Latin America. Then in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and large parts of the world gravitated towards this open international order. And at the heart of this system was the United States. Since 1945, every president of either party has recognized that America created something unique that was a break from centuries of elemental international conflict. But from the start of his political career, Donald Trump has seemed unaware of this history and ignorant of these accomplishments. He has consistently been dismissive of America's closest political, economic, and moral allies. He speaks admiringly of strongmen like Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and Rodrigo Duterte, but critically of almost every democratic leader of Europe. The consequences of Trump's stance and his actions are difficult to foresee. They might result in the erosion of this open, liberal international order. They might mean the rise of a new, not-so-liberal order, championed by China and India, both of them mercantilist and nationalist countries. But they could also result in the long run in the strengthening of this order, perhaps by the re-emergence of Europe. Trump has brought the continent's countries together in a way that not even Vladimir Putin could. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says that Europe must look out for itself now, and as if to underscore that fact, the same week welcomed the Prime Minister of India and the Premier of China. French President Emmanuel Macron upheld Western interests and values face-to-face with Putin in just the way an American president would have done in the past. So Donald Trump might not cause the end of the Western world, but he might end America's role at its center. For more, go to CNN.com/Fareed and read my Washington Post column this week. Next on GPS.